Conversations on Dance is proud to have Yumiko as a continued partner in 2021. Yumiko is a company inspired by beauty and standards. As a leader in the dancewear industry, they take great pride in their impact as a socially and environmentally conscious brand. As a part of this commitment, they've recently transitioned their workshop to 100% green energy, a substantial step in their sustainability journey. While staying devoted to eco-friendly production practices, Yumiko remains passionately focused on connecting and lifting the dance community to promote a more loving and equal world through the power of togetherness. For our listeners in the New York City area, Yumiko's flagship store is currently open with limited hours, or you can always shop online at yumiko.com. Be sure to follow along on Instagram at Yumiko to participate in their weekly giveaways and to stay updated on all things 2021. I'm Rebecca King-Ferraro.
And I'm Michael Breeden, and you're listening to Conversations on Dance.
This week, we are joined by National Ballet of Canada principal dancer Jillian Vanstone. A native of Nanaimo, British Columbia, Jillian trained at the Kirkwood Academy of the Performing Arts and Canada's National Ballet School. She joined the National Ballet of Canada in 1999 and was promoted to principal dancer in 2011. We talked to Jillian all the way from Australia about her career, breakout roles, stage fright, what COVID has been like for the dancers of National Ballet of Canada, and about hope for the future.
Jillian, thank you so much for joining us today. I think we're setting a record for biggest time difference for our podcast. You are, where are you in Australia?
I'm in Brisbane at the moment.
Brisbane. Okay, so we're 15 hours different. Daylight savings got me confused because that just happened.
Yeah, they don't do it here.
Right.
So that's also what messes things up a little bit. So, yeah.
We did have that realization this morning. We're recording this on the daylight savings time change. And I texted Michael and I said, is that different? Like, I bet you they don't do that in Australia. We need to figure out what time we're doing this.
Well, they actually do it in some places and not others. So in Brisbane, they don't change. But if you were calling Melbourne, they would have done a change. So yeah, it's different.
Confusing everywhere.
Oh, I know.
The important thing is that we are finally together after weeks of negotiating between a 15 or 16-hour difference, whatever it may be.
Yeah.
But Jillian, now that we have you here, let's get to your story. We want to hear a little bit about how you first just became interested in ballet or dance generally.
Okay, so from the very beginning.
Very beginning.
Okay. So when I was 3 years old, my mom signed me up for a Parks and Rec program. Mm-hmm. And it was just a week long. I think they called it movement with music or something, but I decided that it was ballet. For some reason, I don't know why. I was only 3, and I loved it. And I have memories skipping around with a scarf and thinking I was just lovely. And I had these little black ballet shoes that I remember really clearly. So I was in love with dancing from that point on, and then kept after my parents asking for lessons. Mm-hmm. And when I was about 6, they thought I had the attention span that would warrant the expense. So that's when I was signed up at a local ballet school, and did the whole ballet, tap, jazz. Mm-hmm. A little bit of musical theater, but I really can't sing. So, lots of passion, but not much behind it in that department.
That's funny.
So when I was 13, I went to the National Ballet School in Toronto, mm-hmm. in Canada, and did my high school there. And
When did you feel like, so obviously it caught your attention right away as a 3-year-old. And then as you signed up for classes and kind of started this structure of ballet, when did you decide like, oh, this is what I want to do and I want to make a career out of this?
So I was 8. Uh-huh. And I remember very clearly going to my mom and saying, I want to be a ballerina. And she was kind enough to take me seriously, because how many little kids say that, and she at least pretended well. And she said, okay, that's interesting. And she went to my teacher. She asked if it was, even a remote possibility. And mm-hmm. my teacher was encouraging. And so at that point, I got more serious. I did some more days a week. I was in dance, and At that point, I find it quite interesting looking back because I'd never seen a full-length ballet.
I was going to ask about that.
Yeah.
What was your experience with, when did you start to see actual live ballet?
So I had been to the theater, I'd been to plays at that point, but I didn't see an actual live ballet till I was 10. Mm-hmm. And so I saw Royal Winnipeg Ballet used to travel to Vancouver a lot. And I grew up on Vancouver Island in Canada. So at that time, it was a bit of a trip to see anything. Now, the town where I grew up, Nanaimo, BC, has a theater and they bring in an amazing programming season. But at the time, I had to go to either Victoria or Vancouver. So it was a 2-hour trip if we were going to see something.
Wow.
And Royal Winnipeg Ballet used to travel a lot. And we went over when I was 10, we saw Swan Lake. And that's actually when I first knew that there were companies and also professional schools, because there was an advertisement for the Royal Winnipeg Ballet School in the program. Mm-hmm. And that kind of blew my mind. I was like, hang on a second. You can go and do your academics and train with ballet, and that's how your high school can be. So that was really an exciting thing for me. And I think a bit of dismay for my parents as they saw how much I was latching on to that idea.
Yeah. So how did you then decide, like, okay, I need to advance my training. I need, I need to be in a professional school.
Mm-hmm. Some of it was a bit chance. There was no one in my family that had been to a professional, nobody had danced even. Like I said, we didn't even know these places existed when I was growing up. And so there wasn't really somebody that was guiding me in that direction. And at the time, not many people had even gone to a summer program from my community.
Right.
Now, since a few of us have gone on from my, small hometown, more and more people are aware and going off to summer programs in these schools and going on to the full-time programs. But at the time, it just wasn't really happening. Mm-hmm. And a couple of my friends auditioned for the summer program at NBS. And so the next year I thought, that sounds pretty great. Mm-hmm. And went and again, traveled to Victoria, which now you don't have to do, to go and do the audition, and went to the month-long summer program at NBS that first year. And the first year I was accepted into the program, but didn't quite feel ready to leave home. I was only 12. And again, looking back, I think, oh my gosh, what a chance I took. Because I kind of thought, I'll just go next year.
Right.
Think about maybe they won't accept me next year. Or, I just thought like, oh, this, I'm dancing. This is fun. And I'm not quite ready. So next year will be fine. These chances I took that now I think, oh my gosh, that was a little risky, wasn't it?
Yeah. Well, it's still very young, 13, to leave home to go to school. They have a dorm that can accommodate kids that young. That's great.
It's pretty great because it's one of the few schools that has a dorm, a full academic program and dance training all within the same facility.
Oh, wow.
So it's really, it's a really impressive program, actually.
So how did your parents take this? I mean, they should have been preparing themselves for the past, I guess it was 5 years since you had decided you were a dancer. They knew it was coming. But were they supportive? Or, 13 is just so young.
Yeah, I was little, and I thought I was so big. And I look back at pictures with me and my frizzy hair and my braces, and I'm going, oh my gosh, I'm so little. My parents were really supportive. I mean, I know that if it had been their choice, they would have preferred me to stay at home. They had a few friends actually whose parents hadn't let them pursue their passion, and it was one person. It was actually dance, but another person it was hockey, and it's one of those things, the chances are slim that you're going to be the one that makes it. But these two people that they knew, they always wondered. And they thought, what if I had tried? What could have happened? And my parents thought, well, if she goes and it doesn't work, at least she'll know that's how it went. And she won't spend her whole life thinking, oh, I wonder what it might have been. Yeah. So I'm very grateful that they thought that way and let me go, because I was just this little kid from a fairly small place. And it was a long way to go. I mean, having said that too, my dad, I think, was a little more caught off guard because the summer program, it's a feeder into the full-time professional program. Right. And he kind of thought I was going to summer camp.
Right.
A little bit. And so he gets this phone call at the end of the summer program saying, oh, we'd like to take her full time. And he was,
what does that mean?
What? I thought she was going for a few weeks to a dance camp. You know, like he didn't really understand. So I think it was also probably good for them that I stayed home an extra year and everybody got used to the idea.
Right.
But it was a long way to go. I was pretty little.
I'm sure that the academic program probably also made it feel more approachable to your parents as well. Having that so important and great to have that all combined so that you don't have to have those crazy schedules.
I know. Yeah, it's really great how they put everything in it. And I think they came at the end of the summer program to see it all and to see where I'd be living and who was taking care of me and all the facilities, and spoke to a lot of people and watched a lot of classes. So I think that also helped that they were welcomed in, as a lot of parents were, to see what was actually going on. Mm-hmm.
So at this point, you've known that there are real ballet companies for a while. So did you have, did you start to develop a dream of dancing for National Ballet of Canada professionally? And when did that kind of become a realization as a possibility? When did you know like this could actually happen for me?
So as part of the program, growing up and going through the school, there were tickets to the shows. Mm-hmm. So we got to see every single program as kids. And so that was my introduction to the company and my beginnings of falling in love with it. I got to know, the people that I really admired and the dancers that I liked watching best and the ones that I was so excited to see their names in the program. Mm-hmm. I also felt a sense of being really excited that there was a company at that level in my home country. Mm-hmm. Yeah. And there was something about that. I don't know, I guess I'm somewhat patriotic, but it's not a huge thing in my life. But there was something about that really made me feel like I wanted to be a part of that. And it was nice to think, I don't actually have to leave my country to get to do what I want to do.
Yeah.
Right.
It was always that thing, people would say, do you want to dance in Europe? And do you want to dance in, people who don't really know, they'd say, are you going to go to Russia and things like this? And I was like, well, it's right here. I can do it here. Right. So that I always kind of like that idea.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I understand that.
But it's just interesting because now we'll get there, but you've had this illustrious 20 plus year career, but did you ever, even those beginnings, consider looking outside, or just like this attraction of having this in your backyard, not really a backyard that's 6 hours away from home, but did you ever consider it?
I did. I thought about it. And it's funny too, like the ideas that you have, even when you've gone through a program and you've been exposed to a lot of international choreographers and dancers, because again, NBS is really good about bringing people in and sending people on exchanges and things like that. But, I had these ideas, for instance, at one point I was interested as well in San Francisco Ballet, but I thought, I don't have an American passport. And
that was it.
For some reason that made me just kind of go, okay, well, that's not going to happen. And I don't know why, what a silly thing. Mm-hmm. There were a few points where I was, I had some struggles in my career and I was frustrated and I wasn't sure that things were going to go the way I hoped. And so there were a couple other times that I thought, maybe I should be looking somewhere else. And funnily enough, each time I did that, something would happen that I kind of thought, maybe I should see how this goes. Like almost kind of in the nick of time, something big kind of changed. And I thought, maybe it's okay. Maybe this will kind of work out. So yeah, definitely. I mean, over 20 years, I think it would be strange if I didn't have times where I thought, oh, there could be something,
Right.
Yeah.
the grass may be greener somewhere else.
Right. So how long were you in the school before you ultimately joined the company?
5 years.
Okay. Yeah. So then sorry, go ahead.
No, I was just going to say, what was that? What was the invitation to the company like? Did that follow like a sort of workshop, or what's the process like taking school kids into the company?
So it's a bit different now, just what the year looks like once you've been accepted into the company. But the school was really clear that they wanted everyone to go through the proper audition process. Now, I'm sure because we had our school performances and things, and then, the director of the company would come and see it, they knew, they would have known. Right. But the company thought it was really important that we have that experience and do that process, which I agree with. I think that's true. So I did the kind of numbers on the bodysuit kind of audition, and did a class and some rep and a little bit of pas de deux. And then was accepted into the apprenticeship year. And I was actually it was lucky for me. It wasn't especially great at the time, maybe for the company, because a few years before there had been quite a severe funding cut. We used to get a lot of government funding, and now it's been this whole transition to be, yes, we still have a lot of support from the government, but a lot of private sponsorship that wasn't previously considered. I don't even think they had a department in the company for that.
Wow.
Because we were so supported by the government.
Wow.
But it was this really sudden cut. And so the numbers of dancers dropped, and unfortunately touring really dried up as well. But I joined right after there had been a big drop in numbers of dancers. So I guess the reason I say it wasn't great for the company, but I got a lot of stage time really early. A lot of time in productions. Of course I was doing the core work and all of that, which I was thrilled to be doing. And it's but I was lucky because it wasn't like, oh, maybe you get a matinee here and there as an apprentice. It was like, we need you on stage every single night.
Yeah.
Right.
So it was like this feeling of being part of things and part of that amazing, camaraderie and support that the Corps de Ballet is. That thing that only exists in a Corps de Ballet. That experience happened quite quickly for me, which was really great.
About how many dancers were in the company at the time when you joined?
I think it was down to about between 50 and 55.
Oh, wow. And what's the biggest that you've seen the company be in your tenure?
I think about 75.
Right. So that's a pretty big difference.
Big difference.
Yeah, pretty big difference. Yeah. Now, some of that is also the character artists, so not as much, in the point shoes, things like that. But I mean, it's a big change in number.
Right.
Yeah, absolutely.
So what were some of your first featured roles, your first inclinations that, the staff was interested in you as more than just a core dancer?
I remember clearly the first one, actually, James Skadelka's The Four Seasons, which for a long time was a signature of our company before other companies started to do it. There's 2 demi-soloist roles in the spring, in most sections actually, but in the spring section, there's these 2 demi-soloist roles, but it's just listed as, principal woman and then Lady 2, Lady 3, Lady. So I was listed as Lady 2, and I didn't know. So I looked at the casting, and then one of the coaches was saying, "Oh, good for you," and I was like, "What do you mean?" Like I thought I was one of the group, and just excited to be on the casting. And so she said, "Oh, it's this role," and I thought, "Oh, I had no idea when I had first looked at the paper that it was actually a bit of a featured role." So. I do remember quite clearly that experience, and it was really one of my favorite things that I've done on stage was this first opportunity. The ballet as a whole is just really lovely to do, and I just loved every time we danced it.
Yeah,
doing that role. So.
Now, where do you stand on stage fright? Was that something like stepping into that, little bit of a featured role? Was that something that was very scary for you, or you were excited?
Kind of both. I mean, I suppose that I will have to admit I stand rather high on the stage fright scale. Yeah. It's it's a bit of a demon sometimes for me to shake, and funnily enough, it's maybe gotten a bit worse, and I think that's possibly because in a leading role, you're not on every single night. Mm-hmm. So you might have one or two shots to get it right.
Right.
And so, and there's space between shows. And so you start to have this gremlin sitting on your shoulder a little bit. So it's in some ways become harder simply because there's a bit less stage time.
Yeah.
That makes total sense. I've thought of that before because obviously like Rebecca and I have talked a lot about having stage fright at different points, and the times when it abates the most are just the times where you're too tired, like you're on stage too much. It becomes, second nature. So it's like you can't sustain that level of anxiety forever.
It's too exhausting. Get rid of it. Yeah.
I have a question for you regarding stage fright though, because you've done and you do so many full-length roles. Does that help take you out of it because you're doing a character, or is that an additional responsibility that can make it scarier?
I actually feel like when there's a character, it's better. It's like, I think it's partly because there's something to rely on outside of just this exposing technique. And, a lot of the ballets without a storyline have this element to it that the entire audience, even if they don't know ballet, will know if it didn't.
Right.
If you're meant to do this difficult step 4 times and the 3rd time wasn't great, everybody knows.
Right.
But yeah, it's just this exposure that just feels a little bit, I know in a lot of ways, I know the audience is really on your side, but it feels like a judgment perhaps, like this feeling like everybody's looking to see if she makes that thing. Mm-hmm. And that's a bit hard for me, and it feels a little more lonely. Mm-hmm. And I think with a story, you have a character to draw upon, but then also this relationship with all the other dancers, and I think this intent that is a way to focus your energies differently.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
What was your first full-length opportunity? Which was the first role that you danced in a full-length?
It was Krenko's Taming of the Shrew. So yeah, I mean, we haven't done it since, actually.
Oh wow!
Yeah, I think. Well, it's interesting because it's a difficult one. It can get some bad press, the story. So, I think it's been a while since some places have done it as well as us. But I had so much fun. I mean, it was really great. It was a good one as a first one.
Who staged the ballet?
Reed Anderson came to.
I was wondering if it was Reed. Yeah. So did Reed pick you for that, or was that from the director?
I was picked from the director. I mean, he approved it, but I was actually originally understudy. Mm. And
what happened?
One of the ladies got pregnant.
Oh.
So I got my first opportunity because somebody had a beautiful thing happen in their life, and so that's kind of how I got pushed into that opportunity, which was, it was great. It was great. Mm-hmm. And it was nice that it wasn't that someone got hurt or,
that's a rare,
yeah. Cause then you kind of feel bad having that moment. Like it is a good moment for you, but you're like, someone else is hurting. Yeah. So that is nice. And I'm sure they were very happy that you got to do it as well.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. It was really great.
Yeah. What was like the next step after that? Did you feel like that was kind of like a turning point now that you had that, especially because you kind of came into it because you were the understudy? Do you feel like that was a turning point?
In some ways, yes. It's really interesting because I think early on in my career, there was a bit of up and down. Mm-hmm. Feeling like I get this big opportunity and I kind of think, oh, maybe this is the kind of jumping off point. Right. And then I kind of wait for a bit. And it's not that I wasn't getting nice things, but it wasn't to that level. And so, yeah, then I kind of start to question and think, oh, maybe that was a bit more of a one-off, or it was just that particular role, that sort of thing. So early on, I think there was just kind of a lot of up and down and, questioning how this was going to go.
When was your first promotion, your promotion to soloist? Was it before or after Timmy and the Shrew? And how many years was it?
My first promotion from corps de ballet to second soloist was under the previous director, James Kadelka.
Right.
And so that was in 2003. And it was the promotion after that was after there had been a change of directorship, actually. So, yeah.
Right. So that must have been, leadership transition is always rough. You always question, is this going to work out? Or my path was one thing, and whether or not you liked it, you knew what it was. And then someone new coming in, when you got promoted under the new director, did that feel like a sigh of relief? Like, I don't have to, it's that transition. You made it work for you. You knew it had worked.
Yeah. I mean, that was a really exciting moment, actually, because it was one of these things where I was the younger dancer and they had cast Jules, and I was given the opportunity to dance the principal woman in Diamonds. And I had one show. And yeah, it was one of these things. And so I was really, really excited to do it. And of course, super nervous to do the show. And at the time, too, I didn't know how to pace myself at all. I remember getting to the finale and thinking, I think I'm going to be sick in the wings. I was so tired and, kind of ran out of music in order to think about that and just had to run on again, thinking I still believe that that's probably the reason I wasn't sick in the wings, because I just had to end up going on stage.
Yes. No time.
Yeah, no time to do that. So the show went really well. And usually they wait till the end of the season to do promotions. And I was really fortunate that after that show, I was called aside, and that's how she told me. So it was a really special moment, actually.
And just doing that ballet too. And
especially amazing.
Yeah. When you were telling us, and since we'd been talking about stage fright and just hearing that you had one show of that, I was going to ask you how were you feeling about it? But I imagine pretty great after.
Yeah. Good after. And I think I had been really well prepared. Of course, I warmed up super well. It was my one shot and everything. So I think once I got out there, I felt it was one of those shows that I actually felt rather comfortable somehow, which is probably why it was successful. It's one of those things you can't force that feeling, but when it happens, it's yeah. So yeah.
You achieved another promotion to the rank of principal dancer in 2011 after another full-length ballet. This is Christopher Wheeldon's Alice in Wonderland. At that point, you've been with the company for 12 years. So you had these consistent promotions, but as you said, you had ups and downs. What did it feel like to achieve that, as a dancer that had been, you've been there for more than a decade. Sometimes people get promoted super fast and then it can peter out. It's, what does that feel like as a vet? I mean, it feels just silly to call someone who's probably 30 a vet, but,
thank you.
But what was that when you got your promotion to principal?
Yeah. So this was another one of those things where it's funny when you stop thinking about things, how things can kind of end up going the way you've been hoping. And leading into Alice, even after that really exciting promotion I just told you about, there was still some kind of ups and downs and feeling like, to be honest, I was for a really long time struggling to be adept at more contemporary work and things like that. And so I wondered for a long time what that meant for me if I wasn't just versatile across everything.
Mm-hmm.
And I was looking at the principal dancers in the company and thinking, oh, they're always cast across the board.
Right.
And what does it mean about me that I'm not? And maybe I won't get there because of this reason. I do these things well and they're putting me in it, but then everything else they're kind of thinking, oh, maybe that's not for her. And this was what was in my mind. And
Mm-hmm.
I think I also spent a lot of time then trying to make myself different, rather than emphasizing the strengths that I had. Of course you have to work on things, but I kept looking and trying to see, what is it about that person that is so attractive to the person coming into casting, and feeling a little bit, in some ways it feels funny for me to say this now, but I really felt like, I'm not really cool enough, like put me in a tutu and that's lovely. And it took me a long time to think, that's also, that's really hard and that's really great. And I really like being in a tutu and
right.
I enjoy that. But I always kind of thought, I don't have enough of an edge and I'm not really cool. And, so this was always kind of a struggle for me. And it took a bit to my confidence,
Mm-hmm.
Having these experiences. So I guess long story to say, coming back to Alice, I was so excited that this was happening and I saw my name on the casting and I just thought, okay, right, I'm diving in, I'm really excited. And I had the experiences before where choreographers from the UK tended to take to me. And a lot of, my very early training, one of my first teachers had danced with Sadler's Wells. And so I think I absorbed something really young. So English choreographers would come and they kind of go, oh, okay. And Christopher is this great combination of the English style and the American style. Mm-hmm. And that's sort of what my rep had been through my career. We had done a lot of Balanchine when I was younger in the company, and we had done a lot of, Macmillan and Ashton and things. So we had that combination. So I think I understood Christopher's work and felt comfortable in it from the beginning, but then I also just worked and worked and worked. Because I will admit, the starting point where I started with that ballet is not nearly where I got to. Mm-hmm. And I think it was this moment where I thought, I've been worrying about all this stuff for so long, I just don't care. Mm-hmm. I'm just going to enjoy this because I love it. I love it so much. And I just, dove in and had a blast and loved working with Christopher. And that's when I first met Jackie Barrett, who works with him so often. And, she became such a dear friend and mentor for me. So it was all these things that kind of came into place that I just fell in love with. And to the point, which was also something I think about now, which I thought was kind of funny, that there's a party at the end of the year where they announce promotions. And I had a couple times where I went to this party.
That is so stressful.
Yeah,
I have to interrupt before you even finish. Because wait, so you guys just know, everyone's going to this party, and it's like you've got a chance, you have an idea, maybe like you feel like you've done the rep
ahead of time.
But
no. They used to tell dancers ahead of it's hard. They used to tell dancers ahead of time, and then it would always leak.
Yeah.
So they wanted it all to be this big surprise. And I get that, but there were a few years where
it's not so much of a party.
Yeah, it's not so much of a party when you're really hoping to hear your name.
Yeah.
And you don't hear it. Oh. And that is awful. And so a couple of years in a row, this had happened. I go to the party and I thought, I've kind of done some things and maybe this is going to happen. And I'm hoping. And then it didn't. And I was just so disappointed and so upset. And so the year we did Alice, I actually checked my name that I wasn't going to go because I thought, my parents are in town. We're just going to go to dinner. I keep going to these parties and I'm having such a nice time doing this role that I don't want to go to this party and then have a disappointment when really, I'm just enjoying this. Like, can I just enjoy this and not care? And so it was kind of interesting. So after was it a matinee or something? And so our director comes on stage and she says, I hope you're coming to the party later. And I said, oh, well, actually, I'm going for dinner with my parents. And she said, well, you can bring your parents. Yeah, like, why don't you come to the party? And so I thought, okay. But then I'm still thinking, don't get your hopes up, because they have they have these other awards that happen at this party. And I thought, oh my gosh, if I go in and I'm thinking maybe I'm getting a promotion to principal dancer, and these other awards are lovely. Like, don't get me wrong, it's really nice, but come on. So I'm thinking, wouldn't that be something? I go in, skipping on air, thinking this is the night. And so, I mean, thankfully it was. And I was so relieved and excited and just over the moon when they said it, that I was a bit of a wreck.
and that's where the party is really cool, because then your parents were there to celebrate.
Yeah.
Like, what did that mean to all of you to have that moment, to share that moment together?
Yeah, I mean, that was really special that they were there. And they were talking about it for a long time, that they were able to be at the party and to see that. Because, it was really exciting. And usually that is a bit of a closed situation where it's a company and patrons event. Mm-hmm. So, another year they wouldn't have been invited or anything like that. It was really exciting.
So cool.
I'm still stressed about the party, but
yes, if it was good news,
I'm glad it happened.
Great.
As long as
I know. No, I mean, there's sometimes a rush for the bar after. It's hard. It's really hard.
Oh man.
So let's talk a little bit about what the past year has been like dealing with the pandemic. I'm particularly curious because we're obviously very connected to very American-centric companies, and that has just been a total flat-out no-go. No one's doing anything or digital work or, but what's the atmosphere for the arts been like in Canada during COVID?
So it's been pretty tough. Each province has a different way of going about things. So, for instance, unfortunately, right now, Ontario, where the National Ballet is hit pretty hard arts-wise. So we haven't even managed to do the film projects that we were hoping to do in the fall.
Right.
And it's been delayed, countless times. And it keeps feeling like we get 2 weeks out from doing something and then it doesn't go ahead. So it's been quite frustrating, and film and TV is allowed to work, and sports teams are allowed to work, but then like theater companies aren't allowed to. And
this sounds like New York City to me. It's deja vu here. But why? It's just so frustrating. I was hoping Canada would be better.
Well, I mean, in some provinces there have been some film projects going ahead and things like that, and there have been some distanced performances. In my hometown, there were a couple, and I was actually hoping to dance there in December. And again, it was like 2 weeks before it was canceled. And this was, 50 people in the room,
right?
2 dancers on stage. They put in a lot of protocols and things like that. And it was frustrating because, there's other businesses with similar protocols that were allowed to go ahead. And I think that's the more frustrating bit. Like, I'm not really suggesting that we should just open everything. And for me personally, I've been really nervous and cautious about the virus. I've always been taking it really, really seriously. I just think when it's really uneven, that's really upsetting because some people suffer so greatly and then others are just fine, but then the numbers keep climbing.
Right.
And so that's what's been hard is, you kind of look and with theater companies in Canada, a lot of them spent a ton of money on new equipment and retrofitting their spaces for air ventilation and then buying all this filming equipment that then all of a sudden they've said, actually, you can't film.
Right.
But a film company could rent out the theater and, like it's frustrating. It's really frustrating.
Yeah.
But I think, sorry.
No. I was just going to ask what you're doing in Australia right now. What are you up to?
I'm very lucky. After a year, I mean, it was pretty rough at home, a lot of ups and downs emotionally, I think. But having said that, we are extremely fortunate, and I will say that while we've taken a pay cut, we haven't been taken off payroll, and that's been I mean, it's just I understand how fortunate I am for that. It's amazing, so I have managed to make my way to Brisbane because my partner is Australian. And he has joined Queensland Ballet. And so I was able to get a visa sort of piggybacking on his passport. So I'm super lucky. I'm lucky that I got a visa, and I'm lucky that I got a flight that wasn't canceled and actually got here, because I know there's citizens stranded, depending on what country they're in. They're not able to get home. I feel like all these things fell into place, which has been amazing. But sort of my plan has been get to Australia, ? So I'm sort of, kind of open to anything. I've been doing some classes with Queensland Ballet, and it's been amazing to be in a room with a teacher, and I mean, really, really strong classes here. And, it was a lot to get used to, because in some cities in Australia still that people are masked up, but in Brisbane, they're not.
Oh.
And so I'm walking around, and people are close to me. And I went into a theater to watch some performances on the weekend to see Queensland Ballet perform. And I have to say, like, after so long at home and feeling like, in and out, and okay, well, maybe we're going to do something. Maybe we're going to get sent home again. And I kind of got used to it. And well, why not? I have, I'll have a routine either way. And I'm really lucky compared to so many people in the world. And, I kind of felt okay, like I was all right. And then coming here, I watched firstly the Australian Ballet's broadcast of their show. And I was watching it through the screen. I wasn't in Melbourne. I was watching it through the screen. And the orchestra started playing, and completely out of the blue, I burst into tears. And because it was for real, and it wasn't this compromise, and it was actually happening, and these dancers were with a full stage and a full audience and full orchestra, and everybody close together. And I really didn't expect to have such emotional reactions. And then the next weekend, I was able to go watch Queensland Ballet perform their 60th anniversary program, which should have happened last year, and was delayed. So it's 61 years, but it's 60. And again, I sat there and I'm looking around, and I mean, there's all these people, so I feel a little bit strange that there's someone right beside me, and right in front of me, and right behind me, and everybody's breathing on each other. And I mean, it felt like I was in an alternate universe. And then the show started, and they began the opening night with this big défilé, and it was the whole academy, and it was the whole company, and everybody coming in, like rank by rank by rank to finishing, starting with the youngest kids in the school and finishing with their senior principals. And this full stage, and of course the big défilé music, and in some ways, sometimes those things can be really corny or cheesy, but this was like mad. Like, it was just so wonderful, and I'm sitting there, crying in the défilé that's opening the show, and it was just really, really something. When I thought I was doing okay, and then just having that experience was really special.
I can't even imagine. It sounds like another world. I mean, it's the masklessness for me. Like, I just can't believe. I mean, of course I can believe. It's like it's based on whatever metrics they have. Almost next to no cases, right?
Yeah, they have like nothing. And so they've had a couple cases, and then they shut down for a couple days. Contact trace, get rid of them because there's so few
Right.
There's so few people to contact trace with, so they can actually do that.
They can do it.
I know.
I mean, it was such a joke in America, the contact tracing. It was just like, you can't contact trace when there are even the lowest we ever got was 20,000 cases a day. That was last June. Yeah.
It's very strange. And I took quite a few days to not kind of feel like I should back up from people. You know, I'm sitting there going, don't be weird, don't back away. But I was getting anxiety about the idea that I was going to come into contact with people who were not going to be wearing masks.
Yeah.
And I was playing out these scenarios, like if I go into the bank and I have to speak with somebody because, I'm doing banking as a Canadian in a foreign country, and I've not really had to figure out how that works before.
Right.
And I was thinking, well, I'm going to be speaking to somebody in person and they're not going to be wearing a mask. And so I was going through this whole banking scenario. For some reason, it was the bank, and getting a lot of anxiety about this idea of speaking with one of the bank employees and being close to them and not having a mask. And, now I've been in just a normal class, and I guess it is so weird to imagine, and almost I'm getting to the point where it feels kind of, because it's so different, it feels weird to imagine where I have come from.
Right.
But I guess it's kind of a comforting thing in the sense that, to tell everybody
it can happen.
You kind of forget quickly, and it can happen, and these experiences are happening somewhere, and it feels really strange that what I came from now feels so foreign. It makes me feel so hopeful that we can come out of it and things can be normal. And in some ways, not that you forget, and I think we shouldn't forget, we have to remember to, keep the things that have changed that are more positive, and all of that. But in some ways you kind of forget quickly, and it's so easy and so human to be close with everybody, and it feels really good. And I kind of forgot how good that feels to hug somebody, to be in a class with with a live pianist in the corner, and it's not over the computer, and there's this energy in the room. And I think I didn't quite realize how much that affects things, how it affects your energy for the entire day being in a class full of people.
Right. Or,
I went to a play a couple of nights ago, and it was on the anniversary of, the weekend where everything closed down. Right. And the particular play I went to was in commemoration of that. And there were 100 people in the theater, and we all watched this play together, and everybody was so in it and engaged. And there was a fair bit of audience participation, which normally I'm really squeamish about, but I was just in it and I loved it. And the whole room had this energy. And so I think what's nice is people are appreciating here what is happening, that things are open. But yeah, also everybody is just thinking about everyone who has yet to get there. It will, and it feels amazing. It really does.
That's such a beautiful glimpse of the future. Yes. That's right. I can't think of a better way to end the larger portion of the interview, because it's just so exciting to imagine. And I'm so glad you're getting to experience that.
Yes. And you're telling us what it's like.
Yeah, it's this magical world where real life is happening.
Well,
it's really special.
Thank you so much for chatting with us today. And thank you. I'm glad we finally figured it out with the time difference and everything. And it's Monday where you are and Sunday where we are. So that's also cool.
Yeah.
Thank you so much. It was great to chat with you.
Thank you. You as well. Thanks so much.